Welcome to Tycoons of Small Biz, a podcast where small business owners are celebrated as the backbone of the American economy. Each week, we introduce you to tycoons who share their stories and advice so that small business owners may learn from their experiences. Tycoons is powered by Backbone Planning Partners, Intrepid Solutions, and Pivotal Advisors. Join us now as our hosts connect you to today's tycoons.
Good afternoon, Tycoons, and welcome to today's episode of Tycoons of Small Biz. I'm your host here, as always, Austin Peterson, coming to you live from our brand new studios in Tempe, Arizona. Maybe not exactly brand new for Business Radio X, but for me, it's the first time in studio. These lights make me feel like I'm actually sitting on a camera, like on a news set, for example, which is pretty awesome. But if you're listening to our podcast for the first time today and you're wondering what it is we do here at Tycoons of Small Biz, we are a small business program put together by small business owners for small business owners. And we essentially interview a new business owner every single week and let them tell their story, talk about their successes, talk about their failures, because we believe that the backbone of the American economy is the small business owner, and we wanted to give them a platform and an opportunity to share their stories and obviously provide them some content that they can use later on. So with that being said, we definitely have a tycoon on the podcast with us today. I also have one of my co-hosts, probably the best looking co-host that I have, Ryan Weissmuller on the podcast with us today from Intrepid Solutions. Ryan, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Austin. Appreciate the very kind introduction. Good to be back in with you again, and excited to hear from Franco today.
It's easy for me as a bald man to just assume that everybody that has a full head of hair is better looking than me. So
we'll leave it at that.
My wife might be the only person on the planet who disagrees with that. Who knows? But I'll tell you what, with our guest today, Franco Albarran of Albarran Architecture and Construction. Franco is he's got a great story. We did a pre-qual call with him. We always do with all of our guests. And I was impressed with everything that he's put together and his background and his story. So I won't steal your thunder, Franco, but welcome to the show. And we're looking forward to this.
Thank you very much for having me. Look forward to being on the show.
Yeah. So Franco, before we jump into the business side of things and what you've built, there in Texas, we typically have our guests tell a little bit about themselves personally. So, where did they grow up? What did they, did they study something in school? Did they go to college? Are they married? Do they have kids? Whatever you'd like to share about that, we'd love to hear it.
Sure. Well, thanks again for letting me be on the show. My name is Franco Albarran, owner of Albarran Architecture and Construction. So I grew up in Rosenberg, Texas, which is about 30 miles southwest of Houston, Texas. I am married 18 years this past summer, no kids. From a lot of my friends that tell me they have kids, they say, hey, you dodged a bullet. But I get to see, we have a large family. I'm the youngest of 10 kids. So when we got married, my wife and I, my father and my mom were both like, hey, regarding grandkids, we're good. There's plenty of grandkids for everyone. And so we've been married again 18 years, live in Houston. I was originally born in Mexico City, and my parents immigrated here when I was about 2 years old. My father had already been here for a while, and when I was about 2, he brought the whole family over. So we're a first generation family, and it was a good experience, unique, different. And we grew up really in part of Texas, because a little more remote from Houston. So my father wanted to live somewhere kind of more open. So our house was one of the last houses on the block, and you could actually see some horses and some pasture beyond. So coming from Mexico City, it was a complete different environment for him, which is what drew him to that area.
Very cool. So you have to tell me more about this kids thing. I've never heard of somebody coming from a family of 10 kids and then not having any of their own. Even if there were fertility issues, they figured out adopting, all those sorts of things. So that intrigues me. But before you answer that, tell me where you fall in terms of, in within those 10 kids.
I'm the youngest of 10.
Okay.
So, yeah. And that was part of my reasoning for not having any kids. I saw how the other 9 treated the youngest one. So I decided it'd probably be best to not have any children.
So how many total grandkids are we talking, Franco?
Oh, you know what? You're going to get me to lie, but I've got to say it's probably a solid 40 plus.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's great grandkids and great grandkids. So yeah, quite the family.
Wow, yeah, that's rare nowadays, right? Because
Mhm.
people are getting married later in life, having kids later in life, and so, you know, I happen to be one of the lucky people in my generation. Most of my friends, didn't have this, but I had great grandparents that were alive until I was about 20 years old. And so I knew them. I spent time at their house probably once a month on a Sunday afternoon. The whole family would get together and we'd have dinner and, play games in the backyard and do those sorts of things. And so I had a relationship with them, but that's not the case for most. But taking it one step further and having great great grandkids is amazing.
Yeah, my father really loved that. He interacted with all of them. He really liked the big family. And, from growing up, as I realized, my wife and I, we got married a little bit later in life. And then we just decided, we're going to focus on our careers. And then when we kind of started thinking about having kids, we're a little later in life, and we started realizing, we're almost 40 years old. Maybe we should probably consider some other options. And then when we kind of really thought about it some more, it was just a little late. We figured, we're already kind of set in our ways, and we wanted to just continue on in the path where we're going right now.
Yeah, nothing wrong with being the best uncle and aunt to, it sounds like a lot of nieces and nephews.
Yeah, hey, you get to sugar them up and take them back home and say, here you go.
That's right. So tell me a little bit more about what it was like to grow up. You were an immigrant as well. You were 2 years old. You were born in Mexico City, but at 2 years old, I don't think you really, understand what that's like. But when you get a little bit older, 10, 11, 12, 14 years old, what was that like? And what did your dad do and your mom do to provide for the family?
So growing up, it was unique. As you got older, as I got a little bit older, I realized, that we are from an immigrant family, obviously, but I think just the interactions we had with other kids in our area. We were not one of the few, but we were one of the few Mexican families in the area. So our cultures were a little bit different from everybody else. And I remember growing up and just wanting to kind of blend in with everybody else and all the other kids who went to school. And that was in the way, it could just be maybe the lunches that my mom would prepare versus the lunches that the other kids would eat during lunchtime. And that's when you start figuring out, our cultures are different. And my idea or my mom's idea of a sandwich is different than, Billy's mom's idea of a sandwich. And those kinds of things kind of make you aware of that early on. But I think as you get older, you kind of embrace that and you accept that and you say, well, this is what makes me unique and different as you kind of move forward in life. And then growing up in Houston, it's just very diverse. There's a lot of cultures here. And so then when I was able to come to college, University of Houston, I immediately felt like I fit right in with everybody. And there was so much diversity. And all of a sudden it was like, okay, I'm not the only one. There's, probably like 20 or 30 other nationalities I'm around all the time that have different experiences and different things to offer.
Yeah, absolutely. So one last question about that, and then I'll let Ryan jump into the business side of things. But
Sure.
so if you had to pinpoint one or two, I guess, major lessons that you learned growing up as an immigrant in this country that have led you to be successful in your life today, what would you say?
Oh, that's definitely gonna be work ethic. My father and my mother both had an extremely hard work ethic. My father was a custom jewelry designer and fabricator. He was a third generation. When he came here, he started working in the jewelry business. Eventually, started his own shop, his own business, selling custom jewelry and also manufacturing it and also repairing it. And then my mother, she took care of all the kids. But she never stopped. It was 24/7, 7 days a week. And my father was the same thing. He worked all the time. And so we saw that growing up, kind of that effort that was put into working hard and being able to provide for your family, but also realizing along the way that, these are the traits that, my father said, look, we're guests in this country. And as we move forward as a family, we want to become part of this country. And then his idea was working hard and contributing to society in a positive light.
Yeah, I think those are great lessons that many people should learn along the way, immigrant or not, quite honestly, right? I mean, I think work ethic is something that isn't always taught at home, which is unfortunate. Regardless of what you do for a living, work ethic is huge in your kids. And, I think even me, I mean, my kids are 22 and 19. I look back and I think, gosh, did I teach them enough about the importance of work? Did I give them enough life lessons to where, my oldest he's going to graduate from college in May, and he's going to go out into the world, and you kind of think, on one side, I joke with him and say, hey, 7 more months, you're going to be off the payroll, right? Or, 8 more months, you're off the payroll. But the other side of it is he ready, right? I mean, did I prepare him enough for that? Did I teach him the importance of work? And is he ready to go out and do whatever it is that he chooses to do to make a living in this world and make a difference and make relationships in this world? And that's kind of, it's important whether we're immigrants or not to teach our kids that.
Yeah, I think everybody, I think the kids learn that, they pick up on it, from home, and also their other kids in their schools and their parents. And, they're around that, they're going to feed off of that. And I think today's kids are far more connected and far more aware of society and things like that. They have so many more platforms, right? Social media. So I think they see a lot of things, and they kind of absorb that. And then, I think moving forward, it's great for the kids that not only with the parents, but it could be an athlete or an actor or whatnot that they see, and they, it's a great idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
Franco, your story is so fascinating. I'm glad you shared some of that. I'm curious. You mentioned your father was a third generation jewelry maker.
Right.
How hard was it to fight that urge to follow in his footsteps? And then where did that spark? You've been in and around architecture a long time, studied it in college. Where did that spark start? And walk us through just when you realized that this was really something you had a passion for, wanted to make a career out of.
So my dad in his shop, I got to join him in his shop from time to time. And I got to see the process firsthand. And it was a creative process of making something and then developing that idea and then building it and giving it and hand it over to the client. So that idea always intrigued me, of designing and fabricating and making. That was just something that I thought to myself, this is what I want to do. And architecture is definitely that, but on a bigger scale. And I think as those lessons that I had with my father in the shop, I got to learn about materials, gold, silver. They have different properties, diamonds, and all that affects and really influences architecture, because brick has a different, property than concrete, which you can do with concrete, with wood, different components. And so then at a young age, being able to kind of expose to that and thinking about that, for me, it felt like a pretty seamless transition to go to architecture. I will admit that my father was a little disappointed that I picked architecture. When I told him I wanted to study in college, he thought maybe I would study business and then come back and kind of grow the family business. But I told him, I was like, look, architecture is really what I like. It's what I feel that I want to do. I was in 7th grade and I saw the picture of falling water from Franco Albarran in Pennsylvania. And that just spoke to me on a whole different level. And right away, I felt that as a kid, and I said to myself, I want to do whatever this is. And so then I just spent the next 5 years figuring out what is that and how can I do that.
So that's interesting. I didn't think about it, but the parallels, it now makes a ton of sense from watching jewelry being made. Obviously, the end product is something different, but a jewel or a diamond in of itself at the end of the day with what you're creating. I'm curious though, because a lot of people, I think one of my dreams as a young kid was I thought I'd be a meteorologist someday, and clearly went a very different direction from that. Something clearly stuck in your mind that you had a very clear vision, very clear path, that this was fascinating to you. You mentioned seeing that Frank Lloyd Wright design. What do you think was the secret? Was it just a firm commitment, or and it's just interesting that literally you thought ahead and it all essentially went largely according to plan in terms of your career path? That just seems a bit unique. What would you ascribe that to?
The other thing in that is that my uncle in Mexico was an architect. And so that was my mom's brother. And I did spend every summer there with my uncle. And I did get to go with him to his office and be around and be exposed to architecture. And that was a huge influence as well. And that influenced me in a different way, in the way that architecture is practiced in Mexico versus in the United States. Over there, the architect is the one that's actually managing the construction, kind of managing everything and kind of seeing it through the end. Here, it's a bit more kind of separated. It can be. But that definitely had an influence in me being an architect and kind of test driving the profession before I got into it in college.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that, because you're absolutely right. Here in the States, typically architecture and building are separate, and you guys do both, right? Which I think about it from somebody who's looking at it purely from an efficiency standpoint. I think, my gosh, if an architect truly understood what those plans meant that he or she is drawing, right? And they wouldn't think about whatever, a closet being in a certain area that ends up being too small, or it's too hard to actually get the 2x4s framed up in that area, or, whatever it is. There are lots of different scenarios where you as a builder and an architect can envision this, but the architects they're not trained typically to think that way. They're trained to, how do I make this look aesthetically pleasing, not what's it going to take to actually get it built, and how difficult am I making it on the contractor who's responsible to build this?
Yeah, I'll say so. Unfortunately, I think our profession we as my ex-boss used to say, we're problem solvers, but we're also problem makers. And so that was one of the things I learned early on in my career, was how to solve problems. And that's really what design what in school they call it a problem, or a project is the problem. How are you going to solve it? And then in practicing as a young intern was very much that, is that we were exposed to different things that would come up during the design phase, that we had to kind of document in drawings and figure out the design. But then there was a whole nother part to figure out, which is when you hand it over to the contractor, and then he's got to figure out your design so he can build it so it doesn't leak. And so, there's no air leaking out or anything getting in. And so there's a lot of little components that go into it. And that's where you start scratching your head going like, I'm asking this guy to do quite a bit of work, because he's never seen this design, and he's got maybe 2 months to figure it all out. And hopefully it's going to stand and not leak. And that's a tall order, even for the best contractors out there.
Yeah. And can they read it the right way, right? Can they read the plans the way that you intended them when you drew them up?
Yeah, and it's exactly it. The other thing is in how we document drawings and whatnot. It's one of the things that my ex-boss taught me was that, we have a thing in drawings that is called line weights, just kind of what you're accentuating. He said, this is a language you're basically speaking to the contractor, to the subcontractors who are going to build this product in the end. And so a lot of what we do also in our drawings is make sure that's very clear and it's understandable, so that everybody who sees it, it's like gets it from the first time. They don't have to scratch their head and say, what was the guy thinking of doing here? There's a lot to do there as well.
Yeah. Well, and I can't believe I waited this long to mention this, but I can't let it go by that Ryan wanted to be a meteorologist as a child. I mean, tell me that face and that voice would not a meteorologist make. I mean, Ryan Rains, right? I mean, you can't have Weissmuller to be.
I have heard meteorology in Arizona is quite boring, so it's probably good that I didn't go that route. But
well, it'd be easy. You would never be wrong, right?
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Yeah, it rains sometimes in the summer, and it's sunny and hot the rest of the time. Pretty much.
There you go. Yeah. There you go.
Pretty much. All right, Franco. So tell us a little bit about your leadership style. What do you do that's unique, and the way that you interact, not only as an architect and a builder, but how do you interact with the subcontractors who are ultimately the ones who are, for the most part, building these structures that you're designing and building?
Yeah, so my way of leadership is kind of getting very collaborative effort with everyone. When I work with a subcontractor, I tell them, look, this is the end result, the end goal. This is what we want this to look like, whether it's a cabinet or tile or whatnot. And then I rely on them and their experience and expertise to tell me what's the best way to install this and to do this, and also be a little bit less maintenance work. Now that works in twofold for us. One, that we get them to kind of get some buy-in where they feel like there's a lot of their opinion is very much appreciated, and I want them to take some ownership of what they're about to do, because they're going to provide a better task. And then the other one is we think through the problem of the installation ahead of time. It's the purpose, really the main purpose for that. So we can kind of think through the steps, think of anything that might go wrong. If it does go wrong, what can we do? Kind of some contingencies, so that therefore, before they get into it, they're telling me all of these things that could, that they need to do this, that, and the other. And then once it's laid out, then it's just a matter of, okay, we've agreed on this, let's go ahead and move forward. And then it tends to be a better seamless installation and a little bit more efficient, which is the whole purpose of doing that process with them.
So let me ask you to take that a step further, or ask you, if you do take that a step further, do you do actual design meetings with all of your subcontractors in the same room with you?
We do pre-construction meetings. I meet with them individually. only this like coordination between electrical, plumbing, or HVAC do we then meet with those subcontractors as a group. But for the most part, I meet with all my subcontractors ahead of time, definitely before they get there, usually about 30 days out. I'll walk the job with them, and we go through it one more time. It's okay, what do you need from me? And what does the previous trade need to do, have ready for you to come in and do your job efficiently and effectively? Because the last thing I want to do is have my plumber show up and say, hey, I need this, that, or that. Or can you guys provide these items? Or can you move this out of the way? We like to know ahead of time. So when they show up, they're efficient and they're happy. And they're the only ones on the job for the most part. We try not to put too many people on top of each other, because it just slows down everybody. And that's when accidents happen. So we're really big proponents about letting every subcontractor in there kind of have the space of their own and actually do what they need to do and be they're much more efficient in that manner.
Franco, I'm curious with the process, which you mentioned and you and Austin were talking is unique in your industry. So, a lot of folks out there, and I'm sure even folks that are contractors, have a perspective of what an architect is and does. You're breaking the mold on that a little bit. How have you found just getting some traction around that, again, amongst the contractors, not even talking about your customers yet, but was it warmly received? Were there some barriers that you had to overcome? I'm sure it took time. What was that experience like?
It took some time. I will say, once I became more of a contractor or builder, one of the things that I did was I called all the previous contractors and builders I worked with, and I apologized for giving them some very complicated designs. And I said, sorry, I made your life kind of difficult there, because now we're in their role, we're in their shoes. But I think in terms of the subcontractors and the other contractors we work with, they received it well. I mean, for them, it's like, hey, I no longer have to call the contractor, then call the architect to come out here and look at something. Now they call me, and I'm able to go there immediately. And we're the ones that designed it. We documented it. We're in the process of building it. And so who better to know exactly what your intention is than the architect? And that's the reason we started the business, is that we started seeing in our business and in our projects, when we weren't involved, that there was these little hiccups and little things that would go wrong, miscommunication. And we wanted to kind of close that gap completely and then just make it more seamless. And at the end of the day, it's the best thing for the client and for the project.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think, the reason I asked the question about having them in the same room, and you alluded to this, I mean, the reality is that, not every subcontractor does things the way that the subcontractor that comes after them would like them to be done, right? And the other benefit of being in the same room is so you can ask each other, right? So how do you like this? What can I do here to make your job easier? But the other thing that it does from time to time is it actually allows them to all be on the same page and understand that the next guy is relying on me to show up on time, to get my job done on time, keep everybody on schedule. And they realize that they're not just working independently, but they are truly working as a team to build this structure as quickly and efficiently as possible.
Absolutely. And, we use the same subcontractors on every project. So there is a lot of overlap. And a lot of times we try to schedule a little bit of overlap, like when one is finishing up, the other one's coming in, and they can see things ahead of time. I can definitely tell you that my framer and my plumber, they're very close, and they always communicate with one another. And the framer will always call the plumber and say, hey, man, last time you were out here, we did this for you, and you can let it run it another way, your vent. Let us know next time if that's how you want to do it, and we'll accommodate that, because it's actually, we got to come back and do some rework. And so and I tell them, like, look, let's have an open conversation, because at the end of the day, I want the best quality product we can deliver. And I also want to make sure everybody's efficient in what we're doing. But they're all proud, and because at the end of the day, we still have to warranty this product. And so then that's how we're able to get the contractors to kind of buy in, and also create that kind of that team mentality.
Yeah. Well, let's take a quick break. We're going to hear a quick call to action for our listeners, and then we'll come back and we'll explore a little bit more about Franco Albarran and his company, Albarran Architecture and Building. Hey there, Tycoons. Austin Peterson here, co-host of Tycoons of Small Biz. If you think you have what it takes to be considered a tycoon, and you're wondering how you could become a featured guest, please follow and then message us at Tycoons of Small Biz on LinkedIn. We'd love to have a conversation with you to see if it is a mutually good fit, and if so, we'll get you scheduled for an interview. If you're unsure about being a guest on our podcast, but are contemplating selling your business over the next few years and you'd like to know what your business is worth, please also follow us and then message us on LinkedIn for your no obligation, informal valuation of your business. We look forward to hearing from you, and thanks for listening to the Tycoons of Small Biz podcast. And now, back to today's program. All right, Tycoons, welcome back. We're here with Franco Albarran, and I said it wrong before the break, but Albarran Architecture and Construction. I said building, same thing, but not the actual name of the of the company. I apologize, Franco. Before we jump back into the business side, I'm going to let Ryan ask another question or two about the business, but it dawned on me that, you know, you were talking about your dad not being super happy that you didn't go into the jewelry business or didn't study business so that you could take over the business. But my mind goes to, well, what about the other 9 siblings that were older than Franco, right? Like, where were they, and where did, you know, why was the pressure still on Franco at that point?
You know, all of them are independent on their own. I say probably about 4 of them in the actual jewelry business. The other ones are married. But you know, it was all my brothers have their own shop, so to speak. They do different components. Some do more kind of full service jewelry. Some just do diamond setting. Some do what they call casting, which is kind of manufacturing of rings and other components. So there's different forms of it, and they all kind of work together and they collaborate with one another to, you know, on different things. And so, you know, they already had started their own business, and my dad, I think I was the youngest one. And so he figured, you know, you're going to step up and do this. You know, he was happy that I went to college, and he was, you know, I'm grateful he's able to, you know, give me that opportunity. And I did want to study business, but really it was just the architecture part. And I told him that, look, I got the idea from designing and making from you. I just want to do it on a different scale.
Yeah. That's interesting. That just, you know, that hit me. I thought, well, wait a minute. There were 9 other siblings. Why was Franco feeling the pressure?
So Franco, when did that pressure start relieving a bit? I mean, was it when you went out on your own? Were there still some skepticism? I mean, when could you really sit back and say you felt like you had, maybe approval is the wrong word, but had their full blessing with what you were doing, and that it actually was the right choice?
Definitely. I think when I started architecture school, that I'd say that you know, not the pressure, but definitely they were all just happy that I was going to want to go to college and wanted to study something, you know, higher education. So I think for me, the minute I got in architecture school, the first weekend, we had some pretty abstract projects that we're working on. But I remember thinking, this is what I need to be doing. This is what I want to be doing. And I never looked back after that. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And it was a great experience. I don't know that I want to go back to the 5-year program at the University of Houston, because it's pretty grueling, but it was fun.
Well, I'm curious, a little bit of a history lesson, because we'd be remiss right now if we didn't at least, you know, we're talking to a lot of the tycoons out there about just how some of the uncertainty in the markets right now is affecting their business. And you've been in this space a long time. You've seen a number of cycles. What are you seeing right now from your purview, and what's your own outlook for your business and the industry you serve, just in the midst of some of this uncertainty?
You know, it's really kind of for us, it's kind of all over the place. Sometimes we feel like it's gonna maybe turn and maybe slow down, and then it kind of picks up again. But I have one thing as a constant, is that this business is either feast or famine. We either have a lot of work, or there's really not a whole lot going on. And trying to find that sweet spot has been very difficult, and which is what we try to do very often in terms of our business and how we do things, by limiting the amount of work that we take on. But I think, you know, overall the business is picking up. I think construction is still very healthy, especially custom residential, which is what we do. Material prices are not really coming down. They're not going up. They're stabilizing. So I think it gives some, you know, a little more certainty to people. But also remodelings have really picked up quite a bit, because now it's like, instead of, you know, going out and building a, you know, brand new house, maybe I'll just remodel the one I'm in now and stay in it 10 more years and see what's going to happen next. So that component is pretty healthy as well. And in terms of our business, we're feeling confident moving forward that, you know, everything's where it needs to be, and maybe it might not be as busy as we would want it to be moving forward. It is busy, but at the same time, we also welcome the opportunity to kind of be able to work on some projects that we really get into the details.
You brought up the feast or famine nature, and
Yeah.
something certainly a lot of entrepreneurs have to deal with. Certainly, it sounds like you want to be able to do it better, but I mean, you've had some sustainability. You've been around on your own from, I think, over for 15 years now, if I'm not mistaken. What has worked that you might share with an entrepreneur out there who's just getting started themselves on how to manage that? When again, I mean, you're providing a service, so that feast or famine impact, you feel that. What's worked for you that you might share as a best practice or two?
I think just being conservative with your cash flow, more than anything. We do a lot of, we're very conservative. I am. I don't really, for the most part, we don't like to go out and kind of overextend ourselves and get over leveraged and whatnot. We really believe in looking maybe 2 months, 3 months down the line and kind of understanding where we need to be with our projections and in our cash flow, but also overall just being conservative in as a business in terms of how you grow and not taking on too much work and then trying to, service different components that maybe you're not really good at doing or you haven't really gotten into, you need to learn more. We do a lot of research on what we're about to embark on and make sure can we provide this service? If we can, how do we do it? What's the best way that we can do it? And then one of the quotes that I read many years ago and just stuck with me was, know what you do well and perfect it. And that is something that I stick to every day. I know exactly what we do well. If we're going to do something outside of our normal scope, then we research it before we get involved. But I think that alone will always bring in the work that you're looking for. It may not come in the time you want it, but it'll be there. And it's just kind of trusting that process that if you put all your systems in place, then it's going to work out.
I love the two things you said there. Austin and I have the pleasure of working with a lot of different entrepreneurs, and when times are good, it can be easy to chase a little bit and to maybe deviate just a little bit from that sweet spot because there's more opportunity. And also something we see all the time is growth takes capital. So watching that cash flow very, very carefully, because there's businesses that are growing that don't have cash. And you just said it, that's what's kept you out of some trouble. Those are two really, really vital lessons. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely after 2008 with the housing crisis, I think we all learned that pretty quick because people, even individuals who you would say on paper, it's easy for them to have access to capital, didn't have access to capital. And then all of a sudden you're going, wait a minute, this might be something that we need to, kind of dig into a little bit more.
Yeah, it's funny when you started talking about forecasting cash flow, I saw that special Ryan glimmer in his eye. 'Cause he loves a business owner that will forecast cash flow into the future. But it is absolutely crucial. We've talked about this on the program. Ryan and I have talked about it individually. We talk about it with our business owners that we work with, professionally. It's missed. Most business owners don't do it. Most business owners don't fully understand it. We don't understand the importance of cash flow overall. I mean, the reality is whether you have $1 million revenue business or you have $100 million revenue business, the biggest thing that causes a business to fail is cash flow.
Yep.
If you don't know it, if you don't know your numbers and you don't know where you're going to get access to capital in the future, if it's needed, whether it's reserves or your line of credit or whatever it is in that instance, your business could be gone in the blink of an eye, even $100 million a year revenue business.
Oh, absolutely. I like what you just said right now. Know your numbers. So for example, professional golfers know exactly how far they hit every club in their bag. So if that's their concept, that we as business owners should know how much money we need on a monthly basis, quarterly basis, yearly basis to function and stay afloat. If you don't, in my opinion, if you don't know those, you need to really kind of get the vitals on those, because that's key to sustaining, a 2 month or a 1 month slowdown in the market.
Yeah, 100%. And you mentioned that, I think you said something like, we learned this in the 2008, crash and companies that you didn't expect to have problems. But the reality is, I don't think that everybody learned it, right? The farther the pain gets away in your memory, the more you forget about it, right? I mean, yesterday was Labor Day. I took the day off. My wife and I and my son and his girlfriend, we went kayaking and paddleboarding at a lake that's close to us, right? And it's interesting to go up there, and my mind works this way, but I'm watching these big trucks and really expensive boats, pull up into the marina, and almost exclusively were they a tradesman, right? So it's a roofing company, it's general contractors, it's tile company, it's floor, whatever it is, almost exclusively those were the businesses. And me knowing what I know and doing what I've done for the last 20 years, and Ryan would be the same way, and you would be the same way, we know that that's not indicative of how much money they make or how successful their business is. That's really indicative of, do they understand the importance of cash flow, and are they leveraged
Yeah.
the hilt, right? And it's more than likely that they're leveraged.
Yeah.
Not a lot of those boats were paid for in cash.
Yeah, exactly.
No, probably not. And to that end, I'm probably one of the only contractors in town, probably in the US, that doesn't have a pickup truck. I have a Honda Accord. The way I look at everything's delivered to the job site anyway. So why do I need have a big truck?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that speaks to who you are as an individual, and some of that might be growing up as an immigrant, as in the family.
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
Yeah, my father, I mean, as an entrepreneur himself and in opening jewelry stores, we felt that as kids. He never said anything, but we knew when times were great, we knew when times were tough. And seeing what my parents had to do in terms of just providing for their family, definitely makes you kind of take a step back and say, okay, so I made X amount of dollars, but how much of that do I want to part with on this? And so then you start kind of equating, and you start valuing your money a little bit differently. It's no longer, it cost me, $100 for sneakers. It's maybe a half hour of my time, an hour, or a week, whatever it is. You start looking at how much time do I have to work to then make that money. And that's where, that's where the value part comes in.
Yeah, no doubt. So, that actually leads me to another question. So there's this balance, right, of security and risk, right? So
Right.
growing up as an immigrant, sometimes you're very focused on security, but at the same time, many immigrant families in our country take that risk to go out and build their own business and take full control of what it is that they're going to build and how they're going to provide for their family. So how did you reconcile that yourself in making that leap of, I'm not going to work for somebody else, I'm going to start my own business?
I think for me, growing up, everybody in my family was either had their own business or was looking to start their own business. So I just kind of saw it as the next step, the next progression to work on. When I initially started out, I thought maybe, I want to aspire to be kind of a partner in the firm and kind of, in a bigger component like that. As I practiced, though, I realized, and I got comfortable with who I am in terms of my personality, in terms of how I work. I'm very laid back. I'm not big for the big corporate, firms. I'm pretty laid back with my clients. I think that's one of the reasons they enjoy working with us, is because all of us are pretty easygoing, laid back, but we're going to provide great value and great service. And then as I practiced, I realized there was nothing out there that really kind of interested me in terms of where I wanted to work. So I decided, hang your own shingle, go out there, see how it goes. And I just got started in architecture. I started that and it went well. And then eventually over time, I started seeing this gap in the market. And I said, you know what, I want to close this gap on my end. So I added another layer, which was building. And I'm very risk adverse, and building is very much, there's a huge risk in that you're doing. Not only a financial risk, because you basically do the work and then the bank or your client's going to pay you back. So there's that aspect of the risk, but then the other risk is I have to warranty this for 2, 3, 10 years structurally. So then there's a lot of that goes into it, but then that's when you believe in yourself and you start believing in your abilities and the people around you, and you hire good people to work with you, and that's how we move forward.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great way to look at it. What I hear really is, one, it was kind of ingrained in me. All my family is entrepreneurs, that I just felt like that was the way that it was going to go. 2, I don't see myself as a corporate guy. I don't know that I could handle that. But 3, it's, yes, there's risk, but I understand that risk, and I'm doing what I need to behind the scenes to protect myself from that risk.
Correct. And the other thing was, if it didn't work out for whatever reason, I could always go and work somewhere. So it's not like I would find myself completely unemployed. I always had that in the back of my head, but I always knew that this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to practice architecture in a different way, kind of the way we do it now, which is design and construction. That didn't exist out there. And so if I wanted to do that, I had to go create that space for myself and for my team to allow us to do that, because no one else wanted to really do that. Because architects, to a certain extent, were risk adverse. We don't want to step into that. That's why it's kind of the delineation between who designs and who builds. But I just kind of felt like, this is the way we want to get involved, and that's what we want to do. And it's a lot of fun. We really do enjoy it.
So you saw that opportunity, Franco, and I was going to tack on at what Austin said, because it did seem like you saw that very early on, that there was an opportunity to fill a void, to really put a couple things together and do this all more efficiently. What's the next evolution, if there is one? I mean, what does Albarran Architecture and design look like 15 years from now, 5, 10? Where do you see it going from here? Sounds like you're far from done.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, I think the thing is getting complacent. We don't like that. But more importantly, we want to become more full service, and by that I mean, is there a component that we could add into our business, whether it's real estate, being able to kind of be your full service for finding that lot for you, helping you close on that lot, moving that process forward. There's a lot of components that go into that, especially if you have a big piece of property and need to replat it. The other thing is interior design. Can we start doing some of that more in-house? So it's kind of looking at it as a whole umbrella in terms of everything falling underneath what we already do to provide that level of service, efficiency, but also, it's very personalized service that we give our clients, very curated to them and their project, and no two projects are alike. And so it's how do we grow that without actually kind of growing the business in the sense of taking on more work? It's can we expand our services that we provide already?
So you've found this unique intersection where you've been able to create an experience that sounds like is much more efficient for the customer, but also more efficient. And again, when you get your partners in the right alignment, more efficient on the back end as well. So you've struck a little bit of a perfect mix here, if I'm hearing all this correctly.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great way to do it because it's all internal in terms of we don't have to coordinate with a lot of other individuals. I'm just someone of the opinion that, one, we like efficiency as much as we can. And at the end of the day, I want to make sure that the clients have that experience and that service that they're looking for. This is a huge investment that they're about to make, whether it's remodeling or building a new home. And we wanted an experience that was going to match that investment in terms of what, one, it's what's the problem, so to speak, how do you solve it? But then it's how do you deliver that problem solving? And that's the part I think that makes us unique, and how we deliver our service and how we deliver because it's a service, but it's a product, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you're going to have something built.
Yeah, no, I think you made a really great point about, well, you made several good points, but one of the things that really made my ears perk up, which is probably, because it's a personal aspect to my story as well, is that, you knew that you were employable if it didn't work out, right? And
right.
So whatever that means, whether that's you have a certain type of education, or you have experience, or you've gone to a trade school, or you've done, whatever that means for each individual, because it truly is different for everybody. It's important to know that you do have a fallback plan. The reality is, we celebrate entrepreneurship on this podcast. We believe that it's a great way of life. We know that it's truly the backbone of the American economy. But you got to go in with your eyes wide open, and you have to understand that you are taking a risk, and that you should have a fallback plan, right? And that was, for me, it was the same as it was for you. It was that education piece, right? I'm
right.
married to a woman that, we've been married for 24 years, but she grew up in a family where her dad worked for the same company for the entire time that she was alive until he retired, right? He's worked for some other companies before she was born, but he was with that same company for 26 years. It's all she ever knew. It was a steady paycheck. It was a pension. It was a 401k plan in addition. It was security. It was benefits. That was her lifestyle, right? And so for her to feel comfortable with it, she needed me to have a fallback plan. That fallback plan was my education and my ability to know that I was employable if I was dead wrong and I wasn't able to build this business as well as I thought I was going to be able to.
Yeah, I agree. My wife and I are the same way. So my wife is employed, and that definitely helps because you have a second income. You don't always have to feel like you have to rely 100% on our income, which we do. But it made it very easy in the beginning and starting out, saying, okay, we've got health insurance covered. We have the basics are met, right? Rent, food, all those components. And so then launching that business was a little bit easier. But then you start to struggle a little bit when you get started, and then that's where the self-doubt comes in. Then you just have to believe in yourself and believe that what you're doing is the right thing, and you just need to tweak a few things here or there. It's nothing earth-shattering. It's just a matter of stepping back and saying, okay, what didn't work? What needs to work better? And I know a lot of people kind of talk about failure and whatnot. I look at it as mistakes. It's the same thing. But really, it's just learning from those past mistakes and what you can do better the next time around. And, we make mistakes every day, all day. And our team is good about we evaluate the mistakes that we made. And then it leads to a better process. But I guarantee some of the best processes and systems we have in place is based on a mistake that we made previously. And we realize like, okay, we're not doing that again. That did not work well at all. But it's being able to look internally and say, okay, how do I make this better for my client?
Yeah, fail fast and fail often, as they say, but make sure that you're learning from those failures and getting better, right?
Absolutely, yeah, that's the key, especially in construction. Construction, things are going to happen, things are going to go wrong. Something may not show up, something might be on back order, something whatever, but you've got to have a contingency plan in place and know your process and know where you're at in construction, kind of like the financials. You need to know where your project's at. So if something does happen, you can easily hit this button and say, okay, we're going to pivot and go in this direction and still keep the project moving forward instead of just being maybe some overhead that you're going through and nothing's happening at all.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, we're coming to the end of our time, Franco, so I'm going to give you an opportunity to just tell our listeners where they can find you. But before we do that, I wanted to just mention a couple of quick celebrations that we have kind of for the show. And that is that we know, and we talked about this in the pre-qual call, that we receive a pretty good, pretty decent amount of publicity from the podcast, and people are seeing our name and they're seeing your name, et cetera, et cetera. But in the last week, we've had multiple people reach out and actually post on their own LinkedIn profiles how much of a difference the podcast has made in their lives and how much they enjoy listening to it. And the fact that they recommend that anybody who's interested in business go ahead and listen to it as well, which we thought was awesome. It tells us that we're building something unique here. But one other thing that's really close to home, which is good and bad for the Tycoons of Small Biz team and the Backbone Planning Partners team, is that our own administrative assistant and behind the scenes coordinator of this podcast, one of them, Lindsay, has decided that she's going to actually move on and open her own business. Oh. She said that it was because she's been inspired listening to all these episodes over the last couple of years as she goes through and actually she writes our social media posts and she does, the recap of the show, et cetera. And she's decided that it's time for her to go out there and spread her wings and start her own business as well. So we wish her all the success in the world and look forward to actually having her as a Tycoon of Small Biz guest in the future as well.
Well, congratulations, sir.
Yeah, so it'll be exciting to watch her journey and as she builds into an organization that's worthy of being on Tycoons of Small Biz. So, Franco, with that, I'll tell you what, take it away. Tell us how we can get in touch with you, anybody who has need of your services, and we'll wrap it up from there.
Yeah, well, thanks again for letting me be on the show. You can find us on albarranarchitects.com. That's ALBARRAN, architects with an S.com. We're an architecture and construction firm out of Houston, Texas. We specialize in design build. We're the same licensed design professional, a single point of contact from beginning to end. And we truly enjoy our projects. All of our clients, we thank them for all their support and for their business, but more importantly, for allowing us to be in their homes and to help them create some new memories down the road.
Couldn't have said it any better myself. Franco, really appreciate the conversation. Appreciate you making the time to come on our podcast and share your story.
Thank you guys so much. I enjoyed it.
Thanks, Franco.
You've been listening to Tycoons of Small Biz, a podcast for small business owners by small business owners. Join us every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Arizona time for an introduction to another great tycoon. And be sure to follow us on our social media channels for links to all of our episodes and great content.